Hi everyone, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, bringing you another video. And today I want to talk about Mercury as it's been moving retrograde, entering back into the sign of Aquarius and what that means. So just to give you a quick recap, on February 16th, Mercury moved retrograde in Pisces at 12 degrees. And has been continuing its retrograde through Pisces. And then here on March 4th, we can see that Mercury, now with this red color indicating its retrograde motion, is now in the sign of Aquarius. And it will stay in Aquarius for about 6 days until it turns direct. And that's going to happen here on the 9th of March. You can see Mercury goes here from red to black. That means it's now turned direct. And then it's going to move into Pisces again around the 16th of March. Here it is moving back into Pisces. So basically between the 4th and the 9th, and even a few days after that, after Mercury's turned direct and it's heading forward in its motion, it's going to be hanging out around the degrees of 28 and 29 of Aquarius. And I want to talk about that today as well, because I think there's some significance in that particular, those particular couple of degrees. So first, let's just talk a little bit about what Mercury in Pisces has been feeling like for many of us. Here you can see Mercury right now today is at 1 degree of Pisces. Mercury is about our communication and our thinking. It's about conversations that we have with people. It's about gathering of information in order for us to make decisions. This is all mercurial energy. And being in the sign of Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac, suggests that Mercury in Pisces is a lot about thinking, but in a very different kind of way, because Pisces is a water energy and it relates to our emotional self. But it also is the last water sign of the zodiac. So it really relates to, in some ways, the highest expression of our emotional self. So this could be translated as having compassion and having sympathy and having a transcendent perspective. Now, Mercury, as it's been in retrograde, sometimes with the retrograde energy, we can kind of review the ways that Mercury expresses itself in a sign and learn a little bit about how we have or haven't been expressing that sign nature very well or not. Because some of the energies of Pisces, when it's expressed more in a challenged way, which could happen in a Mercury in retrograde time, would be thinking more with a fantastical brain or mind, having illusion and fantasy around things, being so like a martyr in our way of thinking that we become overly sacrificial of ourselves. So we can see how it's like boundaryless and borderless, this Piscean nature can be at times. So that could be something we've been coming to terms with perhaps during this Mercury retrograde time, is that, you know, maybe we've realized where some of our borders around the way that we think have been a little too loose or lackadaisical, or we've been living too much in fantasy and some idea of how we think things might be on some idyllic level, because that's also Pisces, is having a very idealistic vision. But again, this retrograde time perhaps has been helping us sort of recognize where some of these ways of thinking about things have gotten a little bit out of hand. Now, that it isn't to say we shouldn't feel compassion and we shouldn't feel sympathy. And in fact, one of my previous videos about Mercury retrograde was acknowledging that perhaps we could be reviewing situations in our lives and looking at them with a more open mind, looking at them with a more sympathetic mind, having more compassion for a situation. These are good things. So that's a little bit about the Mercury in retrograde in the sign of Pisces. Well, now on the 4th, as I said, it's going to move into the sign of Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is a totally different energy from Pisces. It is an air energy and it's fixed in nature. It rules the energy of well, first of all, let me say that it's ruled by the planet Uranus. And I wanted to read a little something about Uranus. This is from a website called domainstar.com. And here's an outline of planetary energetic evolution. So Uranus is considered a transpersonal planet, which means Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are the outer planets that exist beyond Saturn that weren't discovered until more recently. And Saturn has to do with boundaries, and Saturn has to do with like the laws and structures that create the world that we live in, and the forms and structures that create our worlds. But Uranus is a different energy. Uranus is about revolution and it's about innovation. But it has at its core a connection to wanting to evolve and progress humanity. So what this says here is transpersonal intuition and inspiration, communication, reformation and restructuring of cognition and consciousness. So you can see it has something to do with a larger awareness coming into our own awareness, coming into those boundaries and borders of Saturn and giving us a new way of looking at things that is actually for progress and for evolution. It's about intuition and inspiration. And often it's talked about as intuition, like, you know, something all of a sudden comes to your mind and you realize that something can happen in a different way or something can happen in a new way. That's why it rules science. That's why it rules invention. So Uranus, this is what that energy is about. So this energy of Uranus rules Aquarius. So you can see how Mercury retrograding into Aquarius can bring about new ways of looking at things. Since Mercury rules our thinking and our communicating, it's got a very individualistic nature. Even though it's about humanity, it's also about everybody being a unique individual. And through connecting to our own individuality, we can bring our unique understanding and insight to helping humanity. So we can see how Mercury in Aquarius is going to just help us have new insights around things. So maybe we've been struggling through this Mercury in Pisces with just having a difficult time getting beyond our emotions, getting beyond perhaps nebulous fear around the way we've been thinking about certain things in life. And Mercury retrograde in Aquarius is going to say, hey, you know, let's think of new ways to look at things. You know, why don't we try looking at it from this way? And these could be sudden insights that we have around how we might be able to understand things in a new way. So I want to talk about what is going to happen with Mercury as it's going through this retrograde in Aquarius, because it's going to make one aspect to one planet during this retrograde time while it's in Aquarius. And that is on the 4th of March, the same day that it retrogrades into Aquarius, it's going to create a sextile or a 60-degree angle with Venus at 29 degrees of Aries. Now, it's interesting to point out that Venus, which of course is about our loving energy and our relationship energy, and it's about our creative expression. In the sign of Aries, Venus is having to stand up for itself. Venus is having to fight for what it wants. Venus is having to kind of take on more self-worth and personal authority while it's in the sign of Aries. And it's not necessarily always the most comfortable for Venus, because Venus is more about wanting to kick back, relax, and receive. But in Aries, it's saying it's got to stand up. Of course, this can also be about like embarking on creative expression, and but really it's about having, you know, these new invigorated sense of self-asserting within ourselves. And what's going to happen at 29 degrees of Aries, this is called an anorectic degree, which means any sign in the 29th degree of any sign is considered anorectic. And this is from a site called astrologyinaction.com, and it says the anorectic degree is accidentally weak at the end of a sign. It signifies the end of a cycle. This degree represents either getting too much or too little of something. The last degree often describes a desperate situation. The sign that the celestial point or planet occupies represents the area of life that remains unsatisfied. But the planet is readily looking forward to the lessons and cycles prominent as it ingresses into a new sign. The last degree of any sign holds much karmic significance. So what I feel this is saying is that with Venus in Aries, the sign that it's already kind of weak in, it's now at its 29th degree. So it's kind of saying any Aries way, any Venus and Aries way that we have been holding on to is being challenged to essentially kind of be transformed at this time, or let go of, or at least recognize that maybe we're behaving in certain Venus and Aries ways that needs to be evolved ultimately. And you know, Venus and Aries might be a lack of self-worth when it comes to our values and when it comes to our loving nature and our relationships. Or it could also be like that, you know, sort of toddler who's not getting its toy or wanting the candy that it wants. You know, this can also be very Aries energy. It's sort of like throwing a fit because we don't get what we want. Or it can be using our Aries nature to kind of ride roughshod over getting our pleasures met. You know, that's what Venus is all about. And so Venus and Aries can be like, I'm getting my pleasures met at all costs. You know, that's happening. It's my pleasures. I want them met, you know? That can be very Venus at 29th degree, anorectic degree. So it's about becoming aware of how we may be behaving in situations where we're basically, you know, kind of being a little overbearing or a little self-centered when it comes to our Venusian pleasures getting met. A much better way of expressing this energy would be putting it towards creative expression, or you know, standing up for ourselves in relationship. Of course, it's not standing up for ourselves and, you know, making everybody kowtow to our desires, you know, but it can be, especially if you've been struggling with some of this Mercury and Pisces retrograde, where you're kind of, you know, unclear about like where the boundaries are in relationships. You know, this Venus in Aries at 29 degrees can be helpful for helping you stand up for what it is that you need to do in a relationship. So what's going to happen is that Mercury in Aquarius is going to sextile that Venus in Aries. So this is a harmonious angle between the two energies, and it's suggesting that we might have new insight, new understanding in this Aquarian way. And Aquarius is very detached. Aquarius is not a Pisces emotional energy. Aquarius is a scientist. Aquarius is observant. Aquarius is looking at how all the parts interrelate. Aquarius is coming up with new solutions. It's innovative. It's about honoring your individuality. You know, so this Mercury in Aquarius time, as it retrogrades, can really be helpful for you know, helping us to understand and to communicate. That's what Mercury is all about in our creative pursuits, in our relationships, in our values, you know. But again, because that Venus is at 29 degrees of Aries in the anorectic degree, it could be more about realizing that some of our values in relationships may not be like where they need to be. And as we move into Venus and Taurus, and then Venus going over Uranus coming up shortly here, which is going to happen in just about a week, you know, that is a whole different process, perhaps around revolutionizing our values after we've kind of seen where some of this Venus in Aries at 29 degrees energy has sort of been a little out of balance or a little off. So I find this connection between Venus in Aquarius and Venus in Aries really supportive and really positive and helping us progress. Because remember, Mercury is still retrograde during this time. So it's a lot about reorganizing, restructuring, you know, redoing the way we are viewing things, thinking about things, talking about things, communicating about things. So it's still a time where we're kind of integrating a lot of this energy. So I wanted to read the inside degree of 28 degrees of Aquarius, because eventually when Mercury does go direct, which is going to happen on the 9th of March, you can see here now Mercury is direct at 28 degrees. So it's really hanging out at like 29, 28 degrees during this time that it's beginning to move direct. So there's something significant about this particular degree. And I wanted to read again from Inside Degrees by Elias Lonsdale. And he writes about 29 degrees of Aquarius is a tapestry loom. On it is a half-finished tapestry. Karmic processes restricts the self, curbs the self, dictates what must happen to the self. A work upon yourself and, far more strongly, an outer plane self-discipline has been in progress a long time. It must be resumed, taken further, no matter what. Unfortunately, this often means imposing duties upon yourself presumptively. You just do what you have to do. But if the heart is not in it, the work becomes mechanical. A dilemma faces you at recurrent crossroads: to stay with what has been set up or to introduce innovations. Any such innovations represent a huge issue, but without them, the inner core self is shortchanged and the outer mind takes over. You are being propelled by a greater destiny current to honor all karmic agreements and to enhance these by bringing into play a vitally engaged, present time, attentive willingness to be surprised. Meet things from another side and realize that everything is just beginning now and needs to be met with real passion. This is exciting. This is saying, okay, we may be working through some karmic issues. We may have to take care of certain responsibilities, but we can bring an innovative approach, 28 degrees of Aquarius, and understand things from a new perspective, come up with new ideas, new ways of bringing awareness and insight to old patterns, old problems, old issues. So that allows for change, that allows for innovation, that allows for growth. And again, Aquarius is all about innovation, but it's about really looking at things from a higher perspective so that we can incorporate what we're seeing, what we're saying, what we're doing with a higher realm that is about a higher order that is best for everybody. It's best for humanity. And so this degree of Aquarius that Mercury is going to be stationing direct at is really elevating our perspective and helping us. It's helping us to see things in a way that is more progressive, that is more open-minded, that is that is about connection to an intuitive understanding, an intuitive sense that we can open ourselves up to be guided by, that will ultimately then help us make better decisions that are in alignment with a higher order. So I think that's everything I want to say about this Mercury moving in retrograde into Aquarius at this time. I hope that it is very inspiring for everybody. And just know we have just a little bit more time of this retrograde. It certainly has been a lot, and you know, all of those technical things that have been happening have been going on for me as well. But I think that looking at these Mercury retrograde times in a way that is able to help us kind of evolve our perspective is really what I think astrology is all about. And so hopefully there's some of that insight that I've been able to share today and that you'll be able to see in your own life as this retrograde continues to progress. I'll see you at the next video. Take care.